everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm honored to have you with us. This is Sergeant John Perrine, Indiana State Police Public Information Office from the Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. You can find more information about our sponsor at www.indianasfinest.com. My guest today, very, very excited to have you here, traffic connoisseur and expert, WIBC, The Bear, Matthew Bear.
I've never been called an expert in anything, so I really appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank
come
you.
on, Matthew. You do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I remember when you took over as the traffic reporter. It seems like maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was drinking from a fire hose at first. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it a shot.
It was, yeah.
I have to tell you have done an incredible job. I listen each morning almost, and you do a fantastic job.
That means a lot coming from you. Thank you, Sergeant.
And so everybody's favorite topic affects almost everybody, traffic.
Oh, yeah. Nobody likes to be stuck in a traffic jam. That's where it begins and ends with, and that's where we come in. And it's basically on the 5s in the morning with Tony Katz in the Morning News, and we'll do it every, 10 minutes or so to be able to get these reports out. And that's how we do it in the morning. We do it a little less in the afternoon, but you can always find us at WIBC Traffic on Twitter because I put out the updates on there as well. Once we get around, get everything on the air, it's pretty immediate, and that's the nice thing. Twitter is psychotic. It is a psychotic social media, but for our use of it with the outstanding traffic community we have, we use it to share tips. We use it to share crashes, details about crashes. Other news partners around the city will put things out there as well. I mean, it's just awesome. And when I say traffic community, the WIBC listeners is where that kind of started. But, I mean, say somebody from Wish TV, Kevin Rodderman, our news gathering partners, when he puts something out, he's part of the traffic community. You guys are a obviously critical part of the traffic community. Rachel Boggle, CBS 4, she'll put something out there, and we'll all just kind of network together and just kind of make it happen. And I think that's one of the great things about this and why I enjoy it so much. I mean, this is the best gig in radio I've ever had. Sure. Yeah, and I'm not just saying that because you guys are in the room and everything. It's because I really feel like, I might be a little naive, I really feel like, we're helping with these traffic reports.
Well, it used to, when I first became a PIO 3 years ago, I felt it necessary to say, hey, this where traffic is happening, or we've got a crash here. And what I found over time is you guys often beat me to it. So it's not even necessary anymore for me to put that information out. I just direct people to you guys because you do such a fantastic job with that. And it's not just here's where the traffic is, but it's getting creative with the detours. Is one thing I like about what you do is not always do you only offer, hey, there's a traffic jam on I-465. It's here's how you can get around it. And that's the key.
Yeah, that's we had a situation like that this morning, Sergeant. We had a crash, everybody's favorite spot, inbound 70 coming in from the east side. When that happens.
I'm shocked.
I know. It's obligatory almost, obligatory Monday crash.
You just have a fast button where you just record that statement, crash on inbound I-70,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could just play it. Maybe sleep in an hour later, in the mornings. But, we get so far backed up because of those crashes. And, today, it was just happening quickly. It usually gets to about 465 Post Road, so that's what we were doing. Okay, the traffic's backed up to Shadeland. Now you get out on Shadeland, you hit the roundabout, and you take Washington Street into downtown. And that's, and people are responsive to that. I mean, I kind of see, like, Waze and Google Maps as a competitor. Because once everybody starts using those, I'm out of a job. Okay, yeah. I know that sounds awful. People stop crashing, I'm out of a job, and I mean that empathetically. I do. I'm not trying to be.
Sure. No, I understand.
Yeah, I have to have people wrecked. No, but a lot of times we can get that information out quicker by the traffic on the 5 reports, and that's how we can get those reroutes out a little bit quicker than everybody else through the WIBC traffic and through the traffic on the 5 reports in the morning. And that's what we pride ourselves in. I mean, it's not so much we want to be first, but traffic is such a fluid situation. We've got to get it out right, and we've got to get it out fast. Yeah. And that's the thing about it. So
absolutely. And, I tend to be personally kind of an overanalyzer. When we're traveling and I've got my GPS and it says, crash ahead, And I'm thinking, everybody's going to be taking that detour, so maybe I'll just skirt through there. So I tend to like kind of weigh on, do I really take the detour? And usually I find myself locked up in that grid, and I'm like, I should have taken the detour.
Yeah, but how do you know sometimes?
Yeah, I know.
How do you know sometimes? Seriously,
it's so difficult. And with technology, like you said, it's really pretty impressive what we can rely on to travel and get around these things. So what kinds of things, here's the problem, is when we get these traffic issues, sometimes it's such a minor issue that creates such a huge impact. Somebody with a flat tire that decides to pull over on the left shoulder that's almost non-existent versus going over to the right side. Right. Now we've got a 4-mile backup because somebody didn't know which side of the road to pull over on. Simple things like that we can educate people on about not creating that traffic backup.
Absolutely. One of the things I think that's near and dear to your heart is, and you made a video about this that was highly entertaining. It was about turn signals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And seriously, I don't understand how people feel like they could drive on I-465 without using their turn signals, because what you don't understand is, you're protecting other people with the turn signal, but you're protecting yourself too.
Yeah.
You're telling people, hey, I'm moving over. And that doesn't mean start to move from one lane to another, then turn on your turn signal. That's a warning.
It doesn't count.
Am I right?
Count.
I mean, you're the expert in this.
Oh, no.
You're the expert in this. And that's how so many of these crashes and backups can happen. And it seems like such a minor thing, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. And that's the thing. And the problem is, the reason they can't use their turn signal, Matt, is because I see they've got their coffee in this hand and their phone in this hand, and they're driving with their knees. They just don't have an extra appendage to hit that turn signal lever,
Yeah. See, now I'm getting angry. We
better move on then.
I
think it's everybody, which is why the video was so successful, because it touched a nerve with everybody. I think it's a common thing. And again, it's not even about getting a ticket or not. It's about being a courteous driver.
Yes, absolutely.
And I am as a driver, and personal car, I am much more likely to allow somebody plenty of room to merge if I see they've got their turn signal on and they're trying to do it the right way. If you're racing up that closed lane and at the last minute think you're going to dart in front of me without a turn signal, it just makes you angry. And that's the start of road rage.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And that's the thing. I mean, and you mentioned something, you touched on something that's really been a theme with me lately. And part of people point this out in the community all the time. And it's a level of selfishness.
Oh my God.
It's a level of courtesy that it's like, why texting and driving? I mean, I probably shouldn't make this comparison. It's going to seem hyperbolic, but it's the new drunk driving to me, because you have to be at a level of selfish to think it's okay to go down, look at your phone, start punching this in. I mean, I can't text even when I'm not driving. Okay, I have fat thumbs. It never works out. I'm the guy who has to have spell check and correct and everything else. But it's a level of selfishness when you do things like that is so frustrating to me. And I know you can't pull somebody's license for 6 months because they're texting and driving. I don't even know how you guys prove that.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It is a very difficult law to enforce, but it is a danger, you said, and it becomes so normal. I mean, I was at a high school, and I asked all drivers, how many of you have texted and drive, and almost every single hand went up.
Sure.
And that's scary stuff.
That is scary.
It becomes normal.
I wanted to ask you, do you find with texting and driving and, I mean, maybe with the upcoming, the younger generation, I'm not here to pick on millennials or anything like that, but do you find people are getting more selfish and less courtesy, being less courteous on the road?
Yeah, I do. And I talk about that often is almost every time you have a crash or anything like that, it's because somebody was driving selfishly. They were worried about themselves. They're speeding because they're in a hurry. They're not worried about putting everybody else's lives at risk. They're driving fast because they're in a hurry.
Yeah.
And so that's the key, is if everybody would just drive with courtesy for each other, with respect for other cars, that's the key. And the other thing that I see kind of changing channels a little bit when we talk about traffic jams is rubberneckers. They are the number one cause of traffic jams, because we'll have a minor crash on the opposite side of the roadway and the other side starts backing up.
Yeah.
And Matt, I will tell you, in my career, I've seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of people driving by crash scenes with their phone, trying to take pictures or video of that crash.
Absolutely.
What's the purpose?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? Are you ever going to look at that video again? Or do you want to share it on Facebook and tell
Right.
the world that, hey, look at this car who was involved in a fatal crash? Maybe we haven't got to tell their family yet. And now you've posted it on Facebook.
Those are all very interesting, and it seems so poignant. It's just, and one thing, I mean, I thought about this the other day because we were having a trouble on South Side, and exactly what you were describing right there happened.
Yeah.
You know, the gapers, the gawkers, the rubberneckers, all looking over at that crash, and I'm like, well, what if Sergeant Perrine or an EMS or fire truck is using those lanes to respond to that crash and need to take a lane, like the left lane, to assist with that crash? Well, they can't get there.
Yeah.
And you lose precious time, I would expect.
It definitely slows us down. And you know, we use those emergency shoulders. They're called emergency shoulders because they're for emergency use. But we've had crashes, actually, where first responders have crashed into vehicles who get out on that shoulder thinking, hey, my exit's only in a mile. I might as well, I should be allowed to drive on that shoulder. Well, one, if you block me, you're blocking precious seconds,
Yes.
life-saving seconds. But also, you could crash into me or into somebody else, and now you've blocked that shoulder for all the other responders that are coming as well. So stay off those shoulders unless it's an emergency.
Amen. Amen to that. And something else I saw the other day while we're kind of going back and forth here about is I live next to the North Split, ironically. Okay, I've been there for like 6 years.
Did you set up the bleachers in your yard so people can sit and watch and relax, they say?
Right, just kick. No, actually, I have a balcony.
Yeah,
I live
okay.
on the 4th floor, and I can do exactly what you just said there.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed when there is a backup, how people start to use that right shoulder to cut by everybody. And I made a video, I had said it about 6 months ago, and I'm like, don't let them back in.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the wrong response because that's not the safe response. But, you know, it's just so frustrating to see people taking that right shoulder and being like, okay, there's a backup here, but I got to expedite what I'm doing.
Well,
it's, again, back to selfishness,
You know, and Matthew, I'm human. I'm a police officer who has to enforce laws, but I'm human. If I can see the exit and I'm 100 yards from it or 50 yards from it, yeah, I think maybe it's acceptable to use that shoulder to get, if that's your exit or if you want to get out. Because more cars we can get off. But don't be driving a half a mile, 2, 3 miles, or I'll pull somebody over for it and they'll say, well, I've seen 6 other cars do it. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it right. You're the one that got caught.
It's like when people say they're running with traffic.
Yeah, not an excuse. Doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
that's an excuse. Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
And so again, traffic is a nightmare. What I've found is it's in almost every time I have somewhere I have to be at a specific time. That's the only time I ever get in traffic. If I have nowhere to be, there's no traffic. You know, it just seems that way.
Of course.
And so, but those traffic reports are so important in the morning and those detours. And so I know a lot of effort, and you've got to have one of the world's worst work schedules because you work for 4 hours in the morning. Am I right? And then you come back and work 4 hours in the night.
That's correct. I mean, it's a good thing I'm not married or have children because I'd be disowned and divorced by now. I'm pretty sure about that with that schedule. But you know what, Sergeant, it doesn't matter. I just love the work. I just love doing it.
And you know, traffic is one of those things though that it's hard to just plug somebody in. It'd be hard for you to just say, hey, you know, I don't feel like coming to work today. Somebody else do the traffic because you got to know where to get the information, and you got to have those connections, and you got to, you know, I love that you don't sugarcoat things. You know what you want to say and you say it. And that's much appreciated as well.
I was taught well. I was taught well by the Indiana State Police, yourself and Captain Burston. I mean, the very first week I was doing this, you got either him or yourself said this to me. There are no accidents. There are no accidents.
Yeah, that is a hot word. Yes.
Somebody always makes a mistake. It's always somebody's fault. So since then, I actually slipped up one morning. It was early in my career on this, and I said accident, and I texted him in case he was listening. I was like, "Hey, that was a mistake. That's my fault." I didn't mean to do that on purpose.
We do say that, and we say that a crash is no accident. That somebody did something to cause that. Maybe a tree that falls on your car could be considered an accident, nobody's fault, but usually it's somebody's fault. So again, we don't call them accidents. A lot of people do, although it's not done on purpose. It's usually done out of negligence.
Sure.
And so here's the most frustrating thing for us is we get a minor crash on the side of the road. If those cars would just pull off the shoulder, go to the next exit, get completely off the interstate. But if you stop in the wrong spot, you're going to cause miles of backups, more crashes, more headaches, more delays. And so it's just not worth it.
It's so interesting that you say that because I think about these crashes.
About 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. I think about these crashes that do happen where people are over on the shoulder and it's like, well, they're not in the roadway. Surely there won't be a backup. Never the way it works.
Because everybody wants to see it.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking. They're slowing down. They're holding their phone out the window.
Yeah.
And they're rubbernecking.
Yes.
And it's just focus on what's important, and that is driving.
Driving's a privilege. We
It
gotta
is.
remember
It is.
that.
Well, thank you very much. Matthew Baer from WIBC has been a great, fantastic guest for us. Does a great job with the traffic reports on WIBC each day. You've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. Roadshow is out.